And they said, we will shoot this dreamer and see what happens to his dream.
President of the United States. Saddened by the brutal slaying tonight of Dr. Martin Luther King.
40 years ago, I had no words to explain how I felt. 40 years later, I still have no words to explain my feelings.
We immediately got Dr. King out of the line. That was a car. We just saw it. Had to be fairly because he was black. And we just put him in there and told him to take him to the hotel.
I could hear the leadership up front saying, back to the church, go back to the church. And so they started coming back. People who had been beaten, they were bleeding. Policemen sprayed mace in my daughter's face as she was about to go back into the church. I finally made my way over there to the Rivermont Hotel, and he was lying on the bed and said, what do you think happened? We have got to have this march. We've got to have a peaceful march. And he was so depressed, just got into a depression I'd never seen him in before.
What happened yesterday in Memphis was totally uncalled for, just as Martin Luther King's proposed march on Washington is uncalled for and unnecessary.
I am absolutely convinced that we can mount right here in Memphis, Tennessee, a nonviolent campaign and another massive demonstration, which we are going to have, that will be nonviolent.
Dr. King came back because he had to prove that he could hold a peaceful march.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a short, stocky man who spoke in rolling, thunderous phrases sometimes, and at others in tones so soft that his listeners had to strain to hear him. Last night, he said this.
It was an eerie night. Winds blowing, rain falling. I tell you, I felt very uneasy.
The rally that night was also a part of getting Memphis ready for the march. And he thought there wouldn't be many people at the church. So he said, well, I'll tell you what, you guys go over and have the meeting at the temple. And since we're behind on the Poor People's Campaign, I'll stay here and work on the campaign. The here was the Lorraine Motel. And when we got to the church, it was nearly full, in spite of the weather.
The brown stained glass windows stayed lit up with the lightning flashing.
And we came through the door over there and started walking down that aisle. And the people started clapping. Abernathy said, these people ain't clapping for us. They think Martin coming in behind us.
They were just restless. They wouldn't take anything different. I started to say less than Dr. King.
So he went to the lobby and called Martin and said, man, you should get over here. These people have come in the weather to hear you. We came that close to missing it. If he had not made that phone call, we wouldn't have had the mountaintop speech. He knew that his time wasn't long. There were so many death threats against his life. Finally, he said, don't tell me about them. I don't want to hear it.
And every time the door opened, it was almost like it was going to come off the hinges.
There were some shutters in the back, and because of the weather, the shutters kept banging. Bang, bang. Martin would do that. He'd look back, and I saw that it was making him very nervous. That would be the last speech of his life. He talked about death more that night than I'd heard him talk about it in a long time. There were so many death threats against his life.
Then I got into Memphis, and some began to say the threats, talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers.
He always said, I'll never make 40. Not that I didn't want to, but I'll never make it. He was 39.
Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you.
He softened it for us and said, I may not, knowing full well that he would not.
But I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land.
By the time he said that, we were in tears, and we felt something we had not felt in his speaking before.
So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
And he was so overcome, we had to help him to his seat. True. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't die in some foolish way. He didn't overdose. He wasn't shot by a jealous lover. He wasn't shot leaving the scene of a crime. He was a man with an earned PhD degree at 28, a Nobel Peace Prize, the youngest to get one at that time, 34, oratorical skills off the charts, all the things he could have been, UN ambassador, university president, mega churches all over America and the world. But here he is with all of these skills, dying on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee, helping garbage workers.
F.L. King had to die for 1,300 sanitation workers to get a 10-cent raise. It's a terrible price to pay.
And they said, we will shoot this dreamer and see what happens to his dream. That's where the witness comes in.
It is a success in a lot of ways, but it's not over.
He'd want to see our young people involved and committed and concerned.
Yes, you can kill the dreamer.
So they can be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin.
Absolutely, you can kill the dreamer, but you cannot. I must tell you that you cannot kill the dream. The dream is still alive. The dream is still alive. The dream is still alive. Hallelujah.